Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Kohatsu. I am the CMO at PickFu. I want to give people the opportunity to join the broadcast. So I'm going to just give us a couple of minutes for people to join. While we are waiting for more people to join the broadcast, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from and whether your state has voted in the primary. So I'll go ahead and I'll go first. I am coming to you from Los Angeles. And this was the first year that California was a Super Tuesday state. And God, Super Tuesday now feels like it was a decade ago, but it was this month. It was just a few weeks ago. So that's my answer. I'd love to hear from everyone watching where you're watching from and whether you voted yet. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, my name is Kim Kohatsu. I am the CMO at PickFu. And first of all, I know that we are all dealing with changes to our daily lives due to the coronavirus. So I hope that you are staying safe and healthy. And just want to say an added thank you for joining this virtual town hall. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so we had planned this all before the shelter-in-place orders, and it's kind of a weird time to think about elections amidst the coronavirus crisis. But I do think it's important. Why now? I mean, we're forging ahead mostly because I do think that what this has done is it's put into stark relief that who our leaders are, whether that's the county supervisor or the mayor or the governor, all the way up to the president. I mean, that really matters. And so we are going to talk about, how we choose those leaders and ways that we might be able to do that better. And the next question is kind of, why my company? Why PickFu? For those of you who have never used PickFu, we are basically an instant polling platform. And so what businesses do is they use PickFu to quickly market test ideas. So that might be logos, it might be ad copy or UI designs. And we actually use ranked choice voting in our software because our data team determined that it's the fastest and fairest way to reach a consensus answer about how people feel. So I'm going to show you exactly how we use it in our software. This is actually a real PickFu poll where a seller of picnic baskets wants to find out which color will be most popular. So before you put in a big inventory order, you want to know that it has broad appeal. And so, this is what the poll looks like. Option A is a brown picnic basket. Option B is a slate gray. C is black. And D is navy blue. So if you're watching at home, feel free to tell us in the comments, how you vote. So go ahead and rank your number 1, number 2, and number 3 answers. And just like you're doing now, what respondents in the PickFu panel do is they rank their choices 1, 2, 3. And then they also write a comment explaining their vote. And so they might say something like, you know, I went with the dark colors because I wouldn't want the picnic basket to get dirty. Or maybe they say something like, you know, I picked the color that would match my picnic basket the best, or the picnic blanket the best. It's a really good way, I think, for business owners to get a sense of how the market feels. So this poll was given to 50 women. And when the women finished voting, this is what happened. Everybody's first choice vote was counted, and 12 women voted for option A, the brown. 9 voted for option B, the gray. 12 voted for option C, which is the black. And 17 voted for option D, which is the navy blue. So option D is winning, but 17 out of 50 is not a majority, and PickFu requires a majority. And so what happens now is the option with the fewest votes, which is option B, gets eliminated. So the 9 votes that ranked option B their favorite get reassigned in the next round of voting based on the number 2 choice. And so once we do that, what happens is the brown basket now has 13 votes, the black has 18, and the navy blue has 19. And so we still don't have a majority. And so now the option with the fewest votes, which is option A, gets eliminated, and now those votes are reassigned. And so now it's down to the black and the navy blue, and option C, which is the black, has 23, and the navy blue, which is option D, has 27. And 27 out of 50 is a majority. And so now we have the final results where option D won the poll. That's the navy blue basket, that won, followed by C, and then A, and then B. So, you know, what we see here basically is the 50 women didn't all agree on the way they ranked their choices, but most of them at least included the navy blue in their top 3. So it has a pretty good shot at being a popular item for sale. And at PickFu, you know, business owners use this system of voting for choices, you know, like this one, but this could just as easily be logo designs, or it could be ad copy, really anything. And this same system of voting, or something similar to it, can be applied to our elections. And that is what we are here to talk about today. And so what I would like to do now is I would like to bring into the conversation Scott Siebel and Katie Dahl. These two are from Fair Vote. Welcome, you two.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Yeah, glad to have you. So do you have any, you know, kind of reactions to the example that I just showed, the picnic basket?
I thought it was cute. I thought it was a very good example of how ranked choice voting is used, and he gets to a consensus candidate, and whether it's a consensus picnic basket or a consensus governor, I think ranked choice voting is the right way to go there.
Excellent. Katie, anything to add?
I really love seeing the kind of business advantage to using this method. It seems like it makes a lot of sense for what you're doing here.
Awesome. So then, you know, taking that example, why would ranked choice voting, you know, something similar to that, why is that a better way of electing leaders?
Well, our voting system as it stands often fails voters. So whenever there are more than 2 candidates, our current system doesn't really work for us. So many of us remember the Bush v. Gore election in 2000. And I'm just gonna share my screen here. So Ralph Nader from the Green Party was a 3rd candidate on the general election ballot that year. And in that outcome, the argument goes, he pulled votes away from Gore, who perhaps would have won had Nader not been on the ticket. We don't know that, of course. We can only speculate. But having a 3-candidate ballot also forced some voters to strategically choose between their preferred candidate or their second choice, because they were worried about inadvertently supporting the election of the candidate they liked least. The 1992 race with Perot, between Perot, Bush, and Clinton, is similar, is a similar situation there. So ranked choice voting is a simple solution to this problem that makes our elections more fair, functional, and it's a significant benefit to voters. Another clear example is the race to be the Democratic nominee for president this year. The list of Democrats running was breathtaking, I think it's fair to say, and it was clear pretty quickly that the electorate could be split among all these candidates, resulting in a nominee that didn't actually have the backing of most of the party, which is kind of a rough way to go into the general election. In primaries, ranked choice voting can ensure that voters get to decide who is the most viable candidate. It requires candidates to build consensus in order to win, like Kim was just talking about, ensuring whoever emerges from the primaries has the broadest support and is the one most capable of winning in the general election. Another problem that showed up big this year is wasted votes. Over 2 million votes were cast in the Democratic presidential primaries for candidates who had already withdrawn from the race. Another 120,000 plus votes were tallied in the Republican primaries for Joe Walsh after he dropped out. This kind of shows we really need an election method that translates to every voter's voice being heard and no votes are wasted. You can see a little bit more. We have kind of a wasted votes tracker on our website at fairvote.org. This is a democracy. Americans should be able to vote for the candidates they really want, not just who they think other voters are voting for. And ranked choice voting can get us there. Exit polls show consistently high voter satisfaction with ranked choice voting. Studies show in RCV elections that voters understand how to do it.
Yeah, so why are voters more satisfied with this kind of system in places where it is in effect? Scott, why don't you take that one?
Sure. So I actually have a couple things that'll show you that. Here, there you go. So you see right there, we have this exit survey that we've done in places that have used ranked choice voting: San Francisco, Tacoma Park, Maryland, Cary, North Carolina, Portland, Maine, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the state of Maine. People understood it fairly well. As you can see there, San Francisco, all these places have well over 75% of the people who understood it. And the majority of each of them preferred RCV to the old system. And I think there's a couple reasons why that is. People really like or are satisfied with really showing their breadth of understanding all of the candidates in the race, and they don't have to just pick one person or the other person, but they can decide to choose to rank their favorite candidates. So that's one of the reasons why it empowers voters and allows voters to really choose exactly who they want.
Yeah, it seems like, a lot of people in this Democratic primary, they were kind of playing pundit. They were trying to game out, well, this person isn't really viable. And so, this is where, I want to, figure out, like, I want to vote for a winner. And so who can win versus who do I like, right?
Exactly, and sometimes we don't think about this all that much. Of there's a different way to vote, and I think a lot of people are stuck in the mode of, okay, you have to vote for one person or the other, and that's the only way to vote. And ranked choice voting kind of opens up that discussion, because right now we have to vote for one person or the other. We have to have those discussions. Okay, which is this person going to win? Is this person my best candidate? Is this person going to win the nomination? Is this person a candidate that best shows who I care about the most and aligns with my values? And we have these complicated discussions in our own heads about who we should vote for, when if we just do ranked choice voting, it eliminates a lot of that kind of complicated jargon that we think of, and just rank our candidates, and your vote ends up going to the best candidate.
Yeah, that sounds great. Katie, are there any downsides to ranked choice voting?
Really, I think, what Scott was just talking about, getting people past the idea that there is a different way to vote can be a challenge, but it really is a simple solution to a lot of the biggest challenges in our system, and it's just a matter of getting over some of those systematic barriers to making change. We can talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Where is it already being used? Why don't you give us a few places where it's already in place?
Yeah, so I've got that up here. So can you see this?
Yep.
Great. So that's this is our website where ranked choice voting is used. So it might be a little complicated with the coloring there, but the state of Maine uses ranked choice voting for their federal offices from the general elections and for all their primary elections. Otherwise, we have 17 different cities throughout the country that use ranked choice voting already. You can see down here from some places in Colorado to the Bay Area and Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco, Minneapolis, and St. Paul. We just had new uses in Las Cruces, New Mexico, East Point, Michigan. Portland, Maine has been using it since 2011 to elect their mayor. And recently, I know we were talking about if people like it. People like it there in Maine. They adopted it statewide. And just recently this year, the city of Portland decided to adopt it for their city council elections as well. So we have a lot of different cities that are doing it, including a couple cities in Utah this year, but also upcoming, we have New York City who adopted it in 2019 and are looking to use it in their 2021 elections. So it's ranked choice voting is on the move, and it's happening all across the country.
That's awesome. Justin asked this question: is there higher voter turnout in places that use ranked choice voting?
So we've done several studies on that, and we've seen that it's in a lot of places it does have higher turnout. But the total number of ranked choice voting elections hasn't been high enough to really do a huge jump to say, okay, RCV, if you do RCV, then you will equal higher turnout elections. But I will say that recently, in the last couple of years, Minneapolis has used ranked choice voting, and they've had their highest turnout they've had in 30 years. St. Paul, Minnesota used ranked choice voting, and they've had their highest turnout they've had in decades. Las Cruces, New Mexico just had their first election using ranked choice voting, and that was a higher turnout than usual. We've had several elections over the past 4 or 5 years that in these states, in these places that have used ranked choice voting, that have seen higher turnout. So anecdotally, yes, but we still need more data to really have a really good understanding of RCV equals higher turnout. Yeah.
That's great. And are there places right now where ranked choice voting is being considered?
Yeah, so RCV is being considered all over the place. I will say in the previous where our RCV is used yet, I haven't yet mentioned that it's going to be used a week from now in the presidential primary states. So in Alaska, in Hawaii, and Wyoming, their April 4th presidential primaries will be using ranked choice voting plus vote by mail, which is great now. And on May 2nd, the state of Kansas will be using ranked choice voting with vote by mail for the presidential primaries as well. And as some people in that might be watching this on Facebook Live and other places, and state of Washington, Chris Mason's there is from Washington. Several cities, several places like Yakima is looking to introduce ranked choice voting going forward. Similar to East Point, Michigan, Yakima is looking at using ranked choice voting as a remedy to Civil Rights Act. So in some of these places that have considerable representation issues from minority communities, whether it's the Asian American community or African American community or other demographic communities that don't actually have representation on their city council. A lot of those cities are looking to ranked choice voting as a way to remedy that kind of representation system. And Yakima in Washington is one of those places that are looking to do that.
That's awesome. Okay, so I mean, this is kind of kind of the cloud over all of this. I mean, obviously, we're all dealing with COVID, and so some states have already postponed their primaries, and other states you mentioned are doing more vote by mail. I mean, is a reform like ranked choice voting at this time? I mean, is that realistic? Is there any appetite to do that?
Yeah, I think it's very realistic, and I think there is an appetite around the country to do it. And if you are watching this and want to join us, go to fairvote.org and sign up there. And we are having a week of action coming up in May to get people excited about this. But I think right now, as you see from the congressional bills that are outstanding right now, that they're looking at in the House and the Senate right now for the coronavirus epidemic. There's right now $400 million for the 2020 elections in the latest bill, mostly to do vote by mail, but also to do other online voter registration efforts and other efforts to really allow more people to participate in our democracy. So we at Fair Vote have signed on to help and support some of those efforts, and we can quickly move on this. I mentioned earlier that the city of Cary, North Carolina, supported ranked choice voting and did a pilot program to do that. There's a resource center, the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center. So if you go to rankedchoicevoting.org, it goes to the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center. They have a lot of information about how you can turn around a ranked choice voting election quickly. It's being run by Gary Bartlett, who used to be the divisional elections chief in North Carolina. And they had a judicial race statewide where they said, we have 3 judicial nominees statewide. Let's do a ranked choice voting election. And they heard about that 90 days, just about before the election. And they were able to turn that around really quickly to run a ranked choice voting election in 90 days. So if the will is there, you can do it.
Andrew asks, what week in May will the week of action be?
Yeah, hey, Andrew. So we're about to send out the emails, but that'll be May 3rd through the 9th. So we're hopefully going to get those emails out tomorrow, but I'd love to talk to you as well.
That's excellent. So, Katie, are there barriers in place that make more widespread adoption of ranked choice voting? Are there barriers that make it difficult?
Yeah, I mean, we already mentioned that just getting people past the idea that there is a different way that we can do this is a big one. I mean, changing how we run our election isn't a small thing. Our elections are an important symbol of what it means to be in a democracy, the mechanism for the peaceful transition of power. That means you need a really good reason to make changes. Elected officials with the authority to make these changes were they themselves elected under the current system. So there can be, a certain sense of hesitancy to change that system. And our election administrators running our elections tend to be conservative about changing our elections. So it's important for those administrators and elected officials to be our partners in moving these reforms. Another barrier can be voting equipment. So both the machines people vote on and the machines that administrators use to count ballots. So most of the latest voting equipment is RCV ready, ranked choice voting ready, but that's not what a lot of communities are using. Equipment in many places is 10, 15 years old. So that equipment really needs to be updated anyway. And then there's, of course, needing to change laws. In some communities, you'll only need to change your local ordinance or perhaps a charter. In others, state law needs to change before a community can use RCV in their elections. So certainly there are challenges, but Fair Vote has been out at this a really long time, and we are seeing the tide turning. This is a huge moment for reform, and the call for changing our elections is getting louder.
That's excellent. So I only have one more question, but I would definitely invite the audience to input your questions in the comments, and we will do a Q&A. So Scott, assuming I'm watching this and I am completely on board, I'm excited about the idea of ranked choice voting. What do I do? How can I act? How can I help get this in place?
Great question. So one, I would say join us, go to fairvote.org, sign up. One of the things that you'll do once you sign up there is you'll be connected to one of our organizers who can do a couple things, connect you to what's happening across the country. So we do have congressional bills right now, two bills in Congress that every person, no matter where you live, can organize around and ask your local member of Congress to support the Ranked Choice Voting Act and support the Fair Representation Act. So the Ranked Choice Voting Act is up to, I think, 11 co-sponsors, and we hope to gather more. The other thing that the organizers can do is reach out to you and connect you to your local state group or your local organization that's working on this. So we have Andrew, who's from Fairfield, Illinois, watching this, Chris Mason up there in Fairfield, Washington. We have groups all across the country that are working with this. So if you join us, we can plug you into what's happening there on the ground. And lastly, I would just say we need people. We need people to be able to have this be a part of the larger conversation. So talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. Join us for the Week of Action on May 3rd through the 9th, where we're gonna go over how to talk to your neighbors, how to talk to your friends. Maybe in this world that we're living in at this point, that's going to be phone conversations rather than in-person conversations, and we'll having this kind of discussion back and forth. But there's a lot of different ways that people can get involved.
Excellent. We have a question from Dwayne in Los Angeles. If I want to talk to my elected leaders about making a change, do I need to talk to my rep on the city council or someone on the state level? I mean, I think that there's such a patchwork of voting in place. I mean, who do we go to?
Yeah, so that's why we're here to help you, guide you through that process. So we actually have a staffer based out in the Bay Area in San Francisco, who's been working with local groups in Sacramento and LA and other places throughout California, and we can connect you to, no matter where you are, to people in your area that would understand this. So specifically about Los Angeles, and unfortunately, your governor there recently vetoed a local options bill that passed the state legislatures, passed both the House and the Senate there, to expand more cities in the state of California to be able to use to have their local city council do it. So I'm not entirely sure if Los Angeles is on the list, like San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley and other places that can do it. But reach out to us. Let us know what you're thinking about. We can connect you to the people on the ground. And I would also check out, like I said, the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center. They have some good resources there, rankchoicevoting.org. Check out fairvote.org as the website for us, and we can connect you to any state group that would do that. One of the other things, and I'll let Katie answer this as well, we have as a tool for you is we have a phone to action tool that we can use. Several states, Illinois and some other places are using it to connect volunteers like yourself to both your member of Congress, your local state representatives, as well as your city council members. So you can all tell them in an email, hey, please, I support ranked choice voting. What can you do? And even if you're at a city that can't actually move on ranked choice voting because of various state laws, you can actually, like Hoboken, New Jersey recently did, ask the city council to pass a resolution that in support of ranked choice voting, and asking them to have the state give them the power to do that.
Awesome. We have a YouTube user that asks, what are some notable non-political places where RCV is used?
That's a good question. Katie, you want to talk about a couple of those?
Well, I guess just generally, in a lot, I don't know if I can say most, but in a lot of local communities, those are non-political races, non-partisan races for city council. You won't see a D or an R or any other party affiliation associated with those candidates on your ballot. So those are non-political races. So wherever we're seeing RCV in at the local level, those are often non-political places.
You also see, sorry, Kim, you also see RCV being used similar to how you guys are using it with unions to elect officers, with inside political parties, or just inside any kind of organization to elect any kind of officers. Also, you see RCV being used with all sorts of non-political reasons. People use RCV to determine what are their top priorities for the year. I've seen people like elected officials asking their constituents, what do you think we should be caring most about? Climate change or all these other kind of issues, and they use a ranked choice voting election there. So there's a lot of different non-political uses of it, including the UUs, the Universalist Unitarians used it for their president. So churches can use it too. Everybody can use it.
Oh, that's interesting. And I think I read somewhere, doesn't the Motion Picture Academy use ranked choice voting to choose the Best Picture Oscar?
Yeah, exactly. There are a couple other Oscars as well, but yeah, they use ranked choice voting to get a consensus candidate for what's the best picture.
That's awesome. So Lacey asks, are there other countries that are currently using ranked choice voting?
Yes. So that's the thing, is ranked choice voting in the United States is something people are starting to really learn about. But in other places across the world, it's being in use for over 100 years in some of these places, like Australia uses it, Ireland, New Zealand, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Malta. There's several other uses in different forms in some other different places as well. But a lot of these countries, Australia uses a single winner proportional system, or single winner for their Senate seats and their multi-winner for their House seats. So there's different versions of this all across the world, and some of these places have been using it for decades and even close to 100 years. So it's not anything completely new and out of the ordinary.
I think this is a good question to ask next. John wants to know, Katie, what kind of leader tends to emerge from an RCV election?
Well, I think, one of the things we talk about with a ranked choice voting system is that there really is an incentive built in for candidates who want to win to reach out to a broad base of voters. So they don't, not just reaching out to their base because they want to get those second choices. They want to get those third choices in order to win. And if you want that second choice vote of one of your opponent's supporters, it's not the best idea to badmouth them unnecessarily. And so there really is an incentive built in to kind of reach out to a broad base and ending up with a candidate with kind of consensus support among the electorate.
That's great. Excellent. So I would definitely open it up to everybody who's watching this to keep sending your questions. Chris has added some helpful links there. Emily just said, "Great question. Thank you, Emily." Yeah. So I guess. As we just let people sort of weigh in and see if there's anything left, I wonder if there's just some last thoughts that you want to leave everybody with, or anything that you feel like we didn't cover.
Sure. I think there's a couple questions there, but I think we're really excited about where the ranked choice voting movement is going right now. With 4 states this year using ranked choice voting for the presidential primary. We're hoping to, from the week of action coming up in May, to get people to understand that all places, all states should be using ranked choice voting for the presidential primary going forward in 2024 and 2028. It's not just a Democratic thing. This year, it was on the Democratic Party side that there was 20, 25, 50, 100 people running for president. But we had that in 2016 on the GOP side. And interestingly enough, we did in 2016, Fair Vote did a lot of interesting data and polling around Donald Trump was a plurality winner, but he might not have won a ranked choice voting election in a presidential primary on the Republican side, because a lot of people were either for him or very much against him. So, and as you saw in 2016, he kept winning these presidential primary states with 30%, 40%, 28% of the vote at the beginning, and how that worked. He became the nominee. So this is not just a partisan issue, and we hope to work with Republicans, Democrats, Independents, everybody going forward to make sure that ranked choice voting becomes the norm.
Katie, anything to add? I think Scott really said most of it. I will say that talking to voters for many years, and voters or people who are not voting anymore or who have stopped voting, one of the big challenges they put out there about the system is they don't like voting for quote unquote the lesser of two evils. And when you have a ranked choice voting system in place, you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. You'll include more candidates, voters have more choice. You remove that from the scenario. So it really is a simple kind of elegant solution, tried and tested all over the place, and ready to go.
That's great. Okay, we do have some more questions that came in, so keep sending them. Nick wants to know, are there any good online simulators for RCV?
Well, there's a couple things. I appreciate you guys' interesting, way of doing things there. If you go to, we've created a new Rank It tool. So if you go to rankit.vote, that's an interesting that'll help. You can create your own polls, you can create your own election. And there's also OPAVote, OPAVOTE. .com, and that's also you can do not just ranked choice voting, but all sorts of different elections, and it's a lot of kind of internal organizations use that.
That's great. Anthony wants to know, what's the best way to increase voter turnout and participation in 2020? I mean, especially, given COVID and everything like that. I mean, what do you think people should do?
Well, I think first of all, we need to be able to expand vote by mail with what's happening right now, and expand other avenues of online voter registration. A lot of states have done automatic voter registration that is shown to boost turnout. In a ranked choice voting perspective, the thing is, I know we have a few folks from the state of Washington here, and the fact that if you added in all of the people that dropped out in 20 for the presidential primary this year, they would have won the Democratic presidential party primary in the state of Washington. They got 34%, where Biden and Bernie both got like 33 and 32%. So the fact that RCV helps bring more people into the fold. Andrew Yang is a big proponent of ranked choice voting, and he has said that you bring the Yang Gang folks in, you bring people into the fold by having a ranked choice voting election, and that way they can be part and participate in our government, participate in our elections. Unlike if those types of people, independents and third parties and other people, were pushed aside, you only had to vote for one, you're a spoiler, all that stuff. Get them into the tent, into the party, into the process, and that helps out turnout. I would also say there's a lot of other things out there to help turnout and participation, but those are some of the top things. Katie, anything else?
That's awesome.
Those are the big ones.
Justin asked, in places trying to get RCV adoption, are there any exit polls that see if elections might have turned out differently?
Yeah, so I don't know how many polls we have that'll see if they turned out differently. We do have, if you go to our website, fairvote.org, we do have a lot of data on every single RCV election that's ever happened. We haven't done exit polling on every single one of those to determine, okay, who would have won and who wouldn't have won. But we have a lot of data there to show, how candidates did win election. There aren't a ton, but there are some elections where a candidate came from third place in the first choice votes to end up winning. And one of those is former mayor in Oakland, Jean Quan, who came back from third place to first place by getting a whole bunch of other candidates' second and third choices. And she reached out to different candidates, and she reached out to the party, and she reached out to other people to bring them in. So in those places, potentially, those second and third, initial second and third choice place candidates may not have won and choose one or choose the other. But that's because those candidates actually had a good, viable ranked choice voting strategy to build a consensus and build base and get second and third choices. So if you take a look at our website, there's a lot of data on old RCV elections there.
That's great. James from San Bernardino wants to know, what kind of support did Fair Vote provide to state parties that have now adopted RCV in their primary elections?
That's a really good question. So the answer is a lot. So two things. One, we are helping to run the voter education effort. So this is just voter education, showing how ranked choice voting works. So in that effort, we've helped provide local community groups. We provide funding and grants to local community groups to do presentations, to do all sorts of online and offline activities in their states. We've helped provide for videos. So if you check out if you go to Alaska RCV 2020, you'll see the videos that we have provided to show how RCV is going to be used up in Alaska. And we've done that with the other states as well. We've also worked with them, Fair Vote Action, a sister organization to Fair Vote, RC4, has helped provide them, some of the state parties, with more help on the funding side. These 4 state parties who are doing it, these are party-run primaries. So Alaska, Hawaii, Wyoming, Kansas, all are party-run. So that means the states and the taxpayers aren't picking up any of the bill for any of the voter education, any of the tallying of the ballots, any of the printing the ballots, sending them back, all that stuff. And the Fair Vote Action, along with others, is helping to provide that kind of support.
That's excellent. Okay, so I want to give everybody watching one last chance to submit your questions. I just want to mention that if any of you are interested in trying PickFu, you can use coupon code RCV and you'll get 20% off. Looks like we do have another question. John asks, in RCV, are voters required to rank all candidates, or is there a minimum number that's sufficient for tallying purposes? Katie, do you want to field this one?
Sure. So no, voters don't have to rank all of the candidates. Voters are still free to choose just one if that's what they prefer to do. And up to different jurisdictions have different limits on up to how many candidates you can rank, but we certainly encourage jurisdictions to allow voters to rank as many as they want, but certainly voters can choose just one if they wish.
Excellent. All right, last chance for questions, everybody. Get them in. People are typing furiously, I'm sure.
And I will say I appreciate Mike there in the comments talking about the Gene Kwan election and the Gavin Newsom vetoing the local options bill there. Check those out for California specific information.
Yeah, I actually didn't know about that, so I will certainly be checking that out. All right, so I think we're going to wrap up here. I do want to thank everybody at home who is watching. I hope that you are safely social distancing. Oh, we do have one last question. Any good books to recommend?
I will plug, this is Unrigged. It's Dave Daly's book. He's our senior fellow at Fair Vote. It's the second book. It just came out this week. So please go grab it. It's a little bit of hope in our world right now. His first book was I don't know if I can say it here, but his first book was called Rat Fucked. It was about the 2010 gerrymander and how the Republicans and really focused on 2010 elections to help the redistricting effort. But Unrigged is subtitled "How Americans Are Batting Back to Save Democracy." So it's a good recommendation, going through different places all across the country, from Katie Fahey in Michigan to Ruth Greenwood and others who are fighting gerrymandering at the Supreme Court. So it's a really good read to talk about what you can do and how others are doing it all across the country to save our democracy from bad actors.
Katie, do you have any book recommendations?
I'm going to stick with that one, plug in the Dave Daly book.
Okay. Excellent. Well, so as I was saying, everybody, I really appreciate you joining and watching. Katie and Scott, thank you very much. This was a really interesting session, and I hope it was valuable to everybody watching. Again, if you want to try PickFu, pickfu.com, and the coupon code is RCV. And definitely join our friends at Fair Vote, fairvote.org, and get involved. And thank you, everybody. And we will talk soon. Stay safe.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.